In the early 20th century, the Russian Empire, a vast and sprawling autocracy, stood on the precipice of monumental change. For centuries, the Romanov dynasty had ruled with an iron fist, but the ground beneath their feet was beginning to shift. The seeds of revolution were sown long before 1917. The 1905 revolution, a dress rehearsal for what was to come, had forced Tsar Nicholas II to ground a constitution and establish a parliament, the Duma. But these reforms were largely cosmetic, and the Tsar's autocratic power remained intact. The deep-seated grievances of the people, land-hungry peasants, exploited industrial workers, and oppressed ethnic minorities continued to fester. Then came the First World War. Russia's entry into the conflict in 1914 was initially met with a wave of patriotic fervor, but this quickly soured. The war was a catastrophic failure for Russia. The army was poorly equipped, badly led, and suffered staggering losses on the Eastern Front, numbering in the millions. The Tsar's decision to take personal command of the army in 1915 proved disastrous, as it directly linked the monarchy to the military defeats. Back home, the war crippled the economy. Food and fuel shortages became rampant in the cities, leading to skyrocketing prices, long bread lines, and widespread hunger. The social fabric of the empire was unraveling. Strikes and protests became commonplace, and the people's faith in the Tsar and his government evaporated. By the winter of 1917, Russia was a powder keg, and all it needed was a spark. That spark came in February 1917. What began as a series of strikes and protests by women textile workers in the capital, Petrograd, over bread shortages, quickly spiraled into a mass uprising. Within days, the city was paralyzed. The unthinkable happened. The soldiers, ordered to suppress the demonstrations, refused. They mutinied, fraternized with the protesters, and joined the revolution. The Tsar's authority crumbled. Isolated and without the support of his military or political elite, Nicholas II was forced to abdicate the throne on March 15th, ending 3 centuries of Romanov rule. The February Revolution was largely spontaneous, a leaderless outpouring of popular discontent that brought down one of the world's most powerful monarchies in less than a week. Russia was now a republic. In the wake of the Tsar's abdication, a new authority emerged, the Provisional Government. Composed mainly of liberal aristocrats and middle-class politicians from the Duma, it promised to usher in an era of democracy and reform. It declared civil liberties, released political prisoners, and promised to hold elections for a constituent assembly that would write a new constitution. However, the Provisional Government faced a critical challenge to its authority from another power center that had sprung up during the revolution, the Petrograd Soviet of Workers' and Soldiers' Deputies. This council, representing the workers and soldiers, held real power on the ground, controlling the troops, railways, and communications. This created a situation of dual power, a precarious and unstable arrangement where 2 rival governments vied for control of the country. The Provisional Government's fatal mistake was its decision to continue the war. It felt bound by its alliances with Britain and France, but the decision was deeply unpopular with the war-weary population who craved peace above all else. This decision eroded its support and played directly into the hands of more radical factions, most notably the Bolsheviks. While these events unfolded, the most radical of Russia's socialist parties, the Bolsheviks, were initially a marginal force. That changed dramatically in April 1917 with the return of their leader, Vladimir Lenin, from exile. Smuggled back into Russia by the Germans, who hoped he would destabilize their enemy, Lenin arrived at Petrograd's Finland station and immediately electrified the political scene. He issued his famous April Theses, a radical program that rejected any cooperation with the Provisional Government. His slogans were simple, direct, and powerful: peace, land, and bread, and all power to the Soviets. He argued that the February Revolution was just the first stage and that the time was ripe for a second, socialist revolution to transfer power to the workers and peasants. While many initially dismissed his ideas as extremist, his message resonated deeply with the masses who were growing increasingly disillusioned with the Provisional Government's failures. Throughout the summer of 1917, the situation in Russia deteriorated. The war effort continued to falter, economic collapse accelerated, and the government seemed powerless to solve the country's deep-seated problems. The Bolsheviks' popularity soared as they capitalized on the widespread discontent. A failed military offensive in June, followed by an attempted coup by the army's commander-in-chief, General Kornilov, further discredited the Provisional Government and strengthened the Bolsheviks, who were seen as the stanchest defenders of the revolution against counter-revolutionary forces. By the fall, the Bolsheviks had won majorities in the key Petrograd and Moscow Soviets. Lenin, who had been forced into hiding after a premature uprising in July, now believed the time was right to seize power. He relentlessly urged the Bolshevik Central Committee to prepare for an armed insurrection. On the night of October 24, 1917, under the operational command of Leon Trotsky, the Bolsheviks made their move. The October Revolution was not a mass popular uprising like the one in February. It was a swift, decisive, and relatively bloodless military coup. Red Guard units, composed of Bolshevik factory workers and mutinous soldiers, systematically seized key strategic points in Petrograd: railway stations, post offices, bridges, and the state bank. The Provisional Government, led by Alexander Kerensky, was virtually defenseless. The climax came on the night of October 25th, as the cruiser Aurora fired a blank shot, signaling the assault on the Winter Palace, the seat of the government. After a brief siege, the palace was taken, and the ministers of the Provisional Government were arrested. Kerensky had already fled. The next day, Lenin emerged from hiding and announced to the All-Russian Congress of Soviets, "We shall now proceed to construct the socialist order. The Bolsheviks were in power." One of the new Bolshevik government's first acts was to fulfill its promise of peace. Russia was still embroiled in World War I, and Lenin knew that to consolidate his power, he had to end the devastating conflict. In March 1918, after tense negotiations, the Bolsheviks signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany. The terms were crushingly harsh. Russia lost a vast swath of its territory, including Ukraine, Finland, the Baltic provinces, and parts of Poland. These lands contained a third of Russia's population, a significant portion of its agriculture, and the majority of its coal and iron industries. It was a humiliating price to pay, but for Lenin, it was a necessary evil. The treaty gave the fledgling Bolshevik regime the breathing space it desperately needed to focus on its internal enemies and solidify its grip on power. It was a gamble that bought them time. The Bolshevik seizure of power was not accepted by everyone. It plunged Russia into a brutal and bloody civil war that would last for nearly 5 years. The country was torn apart as the Bolsheviks, known as the Reds, fought for survival against a wide array of anti-Bolshevik forces, collectively known as the Whites. The Whites were a disparate coalition of monarchists, liberals, moderate socialists, and disgruntled military officers. They had little in common besides their hatred for the Bolsheviks and were plagued by internal divisions and a lack of a unified command or clear political program. The conflict was further complicated by the intervention of foreign powers, including Britain, France, Japan, and the United States, who sent troops to support the Whites, fearing the spread of communism. The war was savage, characterized by extreme brutality on all sides, massacres, and the policy of war communism by the Reds, which involved grain requisitioning from peasants and the nationalization of all industry. The Red Army, forged into a formidable fighting force by the brilliant organizational skills of Leon Trotsky, gradually gained the upper hand. They controlled the industrial heartland of Central Russia, which gave them access to railways and war industries. Their unified command and clear ideological purpose gave them an advantage over the disunited and fractious Whites. By 1920, the main White forces had been defeated, though fighting would continue in the peripheries for another 2 years. The Russian Civil War left the country in ruins. Millions had died from combat, famine, and disease. The economy was shattered, and society was brutalized. But out of this chaos, the Bolsheviks had emerged victorious. They had crushed all opposition and consolidated their one-party state. The revolution had survived. In the aftermath of the Civil War, the Bolsheviks set about building a new state on the ashes of the old empire. In December 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, or Soviet Union, was formally established. It was proclaimed as the world's first socialist state, a federation of republics governed by the Communist Party. The revolution that began with cries for bread and freedom had culminated in the establishment of a totalitarian regime. The political freedoms promised in 1917 were extinguished, replaced by the dictatorship of the party. The Russian Revolution was one of the most pivotal events of the 20th century. It not only transformed Russia, but also had a profound and lasting impact on the entire world, creating a new ideological and geopolitical superpower that would challenge the capitalist West for decades to come, setting the stage for the Cold War and shaping the course of modern history. The journey from the fall of the Tsar to the rise of the Soviet Union was a turbulent saga of hope, chaos, and immense human suffering. It stands as a powerful testament to how war, economic collapse, and a people's yearning for change can unleash forces that reshape nations and the world itself. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey through history engaging, please subscribe to our channel and wait for more updates. Stay tuned.